My name is Kurt Jetmar. I live in Austria. By profession, I am an artist. On this particular day, I was sketching on the snowy slopes of the Dachstein in the Austrian Alps. My subject was quite a handsome fellow, but a little restless. From the sketch, I had hoped to develop an interesting travel poster. That's what I do mostly, but odd in a way. Of all the faraway places I had pictured, my travels had only concerned my native land and neighboring European countries. I had spoken about this to Andre, a young American painting abroad who shared my studio in Vienna. I had explained, all these posters have enticed me too. A great urge had beset me, an urge to see faraway places. At the time, Andre was working on a poster with a Columbus Discovery theme. Why not go to America, he said. Well, sure, easily said. But such a venture was not so easily undertaken. But a further suggestion from Andre sent me off through the streets of Vienna with a portfolio of sketches under my arm. I stopped in front of the America House, the United States Reading and Information Center. This was my hope. And I obtained a commission to sketch a series of travel posters in America. Well, really, in a place called Florida, which I knew, of course, was one of the American states. And quite wonderful, I had heard. Goodbye, Vienna, my charming and beautiful old city. I was off on my own voyage of discovery. Of course, I knew we would land first in New York. That was our port of entry. And suddenly, she was there. The precious Lady of Liberty. I thought of the millions of hopeful souls who had seen her for the first time. And what inspiration her light of freedom must have given them. And then, in awesome wonder, like a massive collection of great cathedrals, the spires of New York rose into the sky. Who could ever describe the impact of this colossus of stone and steel? But once there, in the heart of the city, Times Square, New York was a living, pulsating experience. Well, they say tourists must always look up, but golly, you feel small when you do. Especially when it's the Empire State, tallest building in the world. It was a little disappointing that I only had one day before continuing my journey, but every moment was well spent, for I walked endlessly through the streets. But by all comparison, my first view of the Florida coast was a thrill too. Miami Beach, so bright, so shining, stretching out to the green ocean. Those big buildings were hotels, the stewardess told me. A closer view on the ground, and they looked equally glamorous and inviting. And the palm trees. Well, I knew, of course, that Florida was a tropical place. Surely an artist could find plenty of subjects here. On a wall beside Biscayne Bay, I was soon lost in the beauty of my first subject. But as I sketched, even the multicolored crayons seemed inadequate to capture the iridescent tapestry of sky and water. This Florida, I am afraid it was a little overwhelming at first. But just about the time I was growing accustomed to America's lavish use of electricity, a stunning impact of a night parade in Sarasota, a city on the West Coast, brought new wonder to my eyes. Cypress Gardens near Winter Haven is surely a tropical paradise. What a challenge to capture the lush beauty of the foliage and the reflections in the mirror-like water. And the other beauties, too, would be something to capture. With a sketch pad, naturally. In brilliant profusion, azaleas, camellias, gardenias lined the pathway of the winding lagoon. Those queer trees with their jagged knees sticking up alongside give the gardens its name. There, you see what happened to me? Art is a universal language. Isn't that fortunate? And who could ask for more charming inspiration? The lovely young ladies in their picturesque costumes seem to be a part of the gardens. Actually, they are hostesses who answer questions and just generally make the visitors feel welcome. As I worked, we talked about my trip to America, and she was particularly interested in my homeland. She certainly was a charming girl. And now I knew what they meant when they said an American beauty. There are a great many novelties in Florida to interest the visitor, like the Chimp Brothers. They most certainly would never win a beauty contest, although the piano player cast a dazzling smile. The rhythm section was more serious about his music. Well, they had a certain rhythm, this two-chimp symphony. This was all part of a daily show put on for visitors, kind of like a circus. We have them in Europe, but not the same, of course. And here in the bright Florida sunshine, the effect was quite different. With feathers for a bonnet, the star performers danced around like American Indians. But I must confess, it was not just the way I had seen it done in your Western movies. It was all very amusing. And then the Indians became cowboys and stalked the wily villains in a most convincing manner. Great fun it was, really great fun. And seemingly with a never-ending display of versatility, the piano player was transformed into a high-wire artist. As a further demand for skill and dexterity, he was blindfolded. We couldn't imagine what would happen next. Has often been suggested. And here they do put the people in a cage and let the monkeys stay on the outside. This intriguing idea was first an experiment at the Monkey Jungle near Miami. There, a band of simians imported from Singapore are allowed to run wild. I suppose they must think the caged humans are very curious creatures. Again, in a setting of tropical beauty, the Jungle Gardens near Sarasota, I resumed my sketching. In the botanical preserve with its numerous indigenous plants lives the pink flamingo, one of the rarest and most beautiful of birds. I watched them wade the shallows and roam the shores of the jungle lake. Their movements were in a kind of incredible rhythm. Ever capture on sketch pad or canvas their exciting, exotic grace. Florida is a land of sports, and I had heard of the American sport of dog racing. But in all honesty, I must say I was unprepared for the astonishing speed of sleek greyhounds. Yes, greyhound racing was originated in America. Although as far back as the time of the pharaohs, there was a somewhat similar sport called coursing. Fast-moving dogs that would run down wild animals. The dogs are placed in boxes at the starting point, each numbered so the crowd can spot their favorites. Well, the rabbit, being electrically operated, always wins. The very next day, and I was on my way to the Everglades National Park. Fortunate, too, that the chief ranger was my companion and guide. It was pointed out that this is a protected rookery, a breeding place for hundreds of thousands of birds, many whose species might now be extinct if it were not for this sanctuary. They were all strange to me, and I couldn't identify them except in generalities. But the ranger said that herons of many kinds, egrets, spoonbills, and pelicans are among the many that rendezvous in the Everglades Park. We were in the midst of a wood ibis colony. In reality, the ibis is a species of stork. They were everywhere, the pure white of their plumage in the bright sun contrasting with the jet black of their wingtips. Now, when I left Vienna, my friends jokingly said, "Bring me back an alligator," because most everyone knows Florida is famous for that frightening-looking oversized lizard. But I soon found out there are alligators and crocodiles, and very difficult to tell apart. But one should. Crocodiles are extremely bad-tempered, have enormous appetites, and don't seem to mind in which direction they snap their powerful jaws. But it was still hard to believe that this fellow's profession was wrestling alligators. Well, every man to his own trade. One thing certain, those jaws can snap shut like a steel trap. Now, why, he's petting the beast. It was most extraordinary. He put the alligator to sleep and at a natural position. That's one to tell my friends at home. And the winner! Wow, that's enough to scare you half to death. This king-sized replica of a reptile identifies the Serpentarium, or snake park, as it is more familiarly known. Here I saw a demonstration of how to hand capture a king cobra, one of the most deadly snakes in the world. Mr. Cobra was far from cooperative. Now, don't think this was just a stunt, and that the poison bleeding fangs had been removed from the reptile. No, this was everyday business here at the Serpentarium. Dangerous, of course, but in the cause of mercy. The big snakes are force-fed, then milked of their venom. And the venom, pharmaceutically prepared, becomes a harmless medical painkiller. I was invited on a fishing trip, which pleased me very much, for I knew that people came from many faraway places to fish in the Florida waters. We arrived at what I was told was a good fishing ground, which seemed odd, but it was good, all right. For in a matter of moments, we began to pull in the first fat bass. It just proved again, you can find most anything in Florida, if you know where to look. Before long, we had our limit. That means you want to leave some for the next fellow to catch. A very polite custom. But in all my imaginings, I never believed I would see a big sawfish close up and swimming lazily by, and other denizens of the deep too. We were at the famous Theater of the Sea, a great natural aquarium of deep pools, where one could watch the antics of creatures usually found in the wild vastness of the ocean. A giant sea turtle, a stingray, dangerous in its normal habitat, for that barbed tail is like a sharp poisoned spear. But at the Theater of the Sea, docile, a friendly hand-fed pet. Ah, but the star performers were the porpoise. These are the large fish that often follow a ship at sea for many days. They seem to have a friendliness about them. Certainly they like to play almost like children. And there is a bounding grace to their movements. When it comes to playing ball, well, a porpoise makes a pretty good outfielder, so I was told. Just watch. They don't mind coming right out of the water. And they do it easily, almost standing on their tails. Yes, they seem to float in the air. Just incredible. By this time, I was a little dizzy from the variety of wonders. And that's when we visited the Parrot Jungle. They were everywhere. Parrots, macaws, cockatoos, full of chatter and curiosity. They seemed to know their own brilliant beauty and would pose with any visitor for a picture. A pretty dark-haired girl and a white cockatoo are a striking combination. And the friendly birds especially like children, even if they carry them upside down. Well, here too they have a show. And first on the bill was Susie, whose bill was very active. All that for one little seed. And who's this? Why, it's Jocko. And he was not going to be left out of the show. Or in simian language, no bird was going to make a monkey out of him. And in the Parrot Jungle, there's more than one way to get your dinner. Your own private elevator, for example. Of course, the parrot performers are smart and really enjoy showing off. But credit must be given to the instructor, who has spent long, patient hours in the training of these tropical birds. a daring feat on the high-flying trapeze. Yes, sir, he flies through the air with the greatest of ease. I most certainly had never seen a parrot stand on his head, but that was the next acrobatic marvel to behold. And there was still another way to create a bite to eat here in the Parrot Jungle, but the trip back was more difficult. The resplendent subjects would surely exhaust the colors of my crayons, but I was eager to try a bit of sketching. Two art critics watched me closely, and they talked it over. Politely, I stepped aside while the jury debated. I am not sure just what the verdict was. An underwater ballet of spectacular beauty. Or perhaps I should say of breathtaking beauty, because the young ladies remain submerged at depths of 25 to 100 feet, from 30 to 40 minutes, with only an occasional draft from an air hose. Anyway, they are the mermaids of Weeki Wachee Spring. And I watched like seeing a living dream picture. Remember Cypress Gardens? Well, I'd promised to return there. As a matter of fact, had been looking forward to it. The same lovely girls in the colorful old-fashioned costumes. And by contrast, there were other girls who scrambled out of the car wearing bathing suits and ran down the walk, each carrying a pair of skis. Along with a few hundred other people, I was about to see a daring exhibition. The girls held a Confederate flag, remindful of the Old South. This kind of skiing was far different from what I had known in the frozen Alps. Ballet girls. Charming. And aren't they pretty? Don Nicholas was his name. I wondered what he was going to do with that small paddle. Skiing on a canoe pedal was enough, but a fellow named Scott had a variation of his own. He went skimming swiftly over the water on two small shoe skis. Then came the great Alfredo. You had to see this to believe. Even then, you blink your eyes in wonder. Skiing on his bare feet. Bravo! Then came the ski acrobats. Ever ski on a flying saucer? A marvelous clown delighted the crowd when he performed intricate feats of dexterity with a skimming saucer and a common chair. Another funny fellow made us laugh as he ran to the water to join his comrades in buffoonery. But I quickly realized these men were champion acrobats, the greatest I had ever seen. The girls of the water show. A beautiful display of precision and grace. This was the grand finale to the dazzling aquacade of the Florida lagoons. Even as I stood talking with the girls there at the Cypress Gardens, I was thinking of all the varied and fascinating experiences I had had in so short a time. Everyone had made me welcome and helped me to see the color and splendors of this tropical land. So many memories and pictures were carved indelibly in my mind. I was sure they would find expression on canvas when I returned to my painting. And as a final farewell, a last and memorable ride through the blossom-lined lagoon of the tropical gardens. How could I ever explain all this to my friends at home? For that matter, how could I ever leave so charming a place and such enticing company? Ah, that was my delight.